we appreciate it in person. And those of you that are watching our live stream production or later on a recorded version, thank you for joining us. This is our second candidate forum for the city elections for this year. I'm Wayne Mays with the Chamber of Commerce, and it's our pleasure at the Chamber to partner with both the library here, which is our host, and Ozarks Electric and Ozarks Go, which is our presenting sponsor, to bring you these forums. As I said, there are 5, and this is the second one. This one and the next 2 will focus on city council seats, positions, and it's position 2 in each of the wards except Ward 3, where we didn't have a race. So this is Ward 1 and position 2, and our candidates today for this position are DeAndre Jones and Jody Verser. You see their name tags there. So, gentlemen, I'm going to ask a favor and ask if you would allow me to call you by your first name during the course of this thing. It'll make you seem more human. It'll make it easier for me to remember, okay? So, DeAndre and Jody, we appreciate that. The method that we'll use is, it's a forum, not a debate, so we won't be having interaction between the candidates. We will have interaction between the moderator and the candidates. They'll answer my questions directly, and we appreciate that. Well, we have a timekeeper today, Jason Gill, who is with Brownlee and Mann, consulting engineers, I think you said, right? And he is a current member of the Fayetteville Chamber adult leadership class, and we appreciate that class. They're doing some things. So this is some practical hands-on experience for Jason. He'll use a yellow card. Everything is 2 minutes, so when the candidates, when you have 2 minutes, you start, and when you have 30 seconds left, he'll hold up the yellow card. When you need to stop, your 2 minutes is up, he'll hold up the red card, and it'll be as simple as that. I will tell you, as I've told in previous candidates, this is not a gotcha situation, so do not, when the red card is held up, stop immediately in the middle of a sentence. Please finish your thought, finish your sentence. Our goal is to get information out from you to these folks right here. Each candidate will have a 2-minute opening and a 2-minute closing, and in between we'll do questions, and I'll be asking those, and they'll have up to 2 minutes to respond. Occasionally we may have a yes-no answer, a yes-no question, so you do not have to use the entire 2 minutes. If your answer is yes, that's fine. If it's no, that's fine as well. We'll go from there. The programs are all being live streamed by the folks there in the audiovisual room by the library, and we appreciate that service, and recorded. And so there will be links at both the libraries and chambers websites and social media. So if you want to find out those, there are links there that you'll be able to connect to and be able to get that done. So let's begin. To help us out, I just want to read from the city's website. It says, the city of Fayetteville operates under a mayor-council form of government. In this system, the city council is the legislative and policy-making body of city government. The Fayetteville City Council sets city policy by passing ordinances and resolutions. The council also determines the city budget and appoints and removes certain board, committee, and commission members. To locate your ward, we want you to do that after today, you will be informed. We want you to vote. To locate your ward and your city council members for a Fayetteville address, please go to my_Fayetteville_services, my Fayetteville services, and type in an address, and it will bring up either the sitting council member or the candidates that are running. All right, gentlemen, are you ready?
Sure.
Okay. All right, Jason, are you ready? Okay. Jody, our first question will go, actually the first question will go to Mr. Jones. We're going to go alphabetical. Question 1. Well, actually, we're going to do opening statements first. There you go. Keep me. Come on. Stop me when I start. If I start wandering down a path, say, Wayne, come back, come back. Okay. This is the second time today. You'd think I'd know how to do it. All right. Opening statements, each of you, and we're going to go alphabetical. Mr. Jones, your opening statement first.
Okay. Once again, thank you so much for waiting for me, and thank you for hosting this session. In 2020, I was elected to serve the citizens of Ward 1. I made one promise, and that is always to put their concerns, your concerns, before politics. Over the past 4 years, I've been unwavering in my commitment to addressing your concerns, advocating on your behalf, and achieving results. I've been responsive to your emails and your phone calls, and I've personally visited homes to ensure that everyone feels heard, seen, and valued. I was asked the other day, why did I want to serve a second term? and I cannot help but reflect on the work of advocating for people to make their voices heard. It is one of the most important jobs anyone can do and can become, and it guides the future of Fayetteville for generations. My responsibility is to not solve everyone's problems. It's to help remove barriers and leverage the capacity of the city to address the fundamental challenges that preclude our citizens from getting access to opportunity, abundant and affordable housing, affordable living, more solid and equitable infrastructure, opportunities for businesses to thrive, and an overall meaningful and focused quality of life. I would be remiss and never so arrogant to believe that I alone achieve results, but when we work together, none of us, including me, can ever do great things alone, but we can all do small things with great love, and together we can do something wonderful, and that's achieve Fayetteville that belongs to everyone. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Jody?
Sure, yeah. Can everybody hear me? Okay, so I've got a little bit of catch up to do, getting into this fresh. Not a lot of people know me or who I am, so I'll start from the beginning. I think hopefully through that story about my personal life, where I'm from and why I'm here, will help tell you a little bit about what makes me tick. It's not always easy to know that after the fact. So I'll just start by saying I'm from Heber Springs, Arkansas. I was born there in 1986, so that ages me there, 38. I came from a long line of carpenters and farmers and people working with their hands. There's a lot of versers going back in that area. My dad, a small engine mechanic, and my mom designing ad copy for the local newspaper, back when there was a real printing press there, paper on real ink and all. So fast forwarding a little bit, I decided to push myself a little bit and start taking notes for the first time in school, which I had to whenever I was accepted to the math and science school down in Hot Springs, where I spent my junior and senior year of high school. And so the Arkansas School for Mathematics and Sciences, and my senior year it became part of the University of Arkansas. And along with that came a gentleman coming down there, scooping up all this magnet school for nerds, but it's public, and just accepting us left and right. And so it was pretty swiftly thereafter that I came to the University of Arkansas, became a proud Razorback, and then eventually going through the 5-year professional program at the Fay Jones School of Architecture and Design, and then ultimately graduating from there, and then starting my professional career in the middle of a recession, which I'll get to later.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Okay, here's a question that is not rhetorical. Do we have a housing crisis? I'm not going to make you waste your 2 minutes answering that question. We've done a little bit of polling at the chamber and checked with quite a few folks around, and we're getting a resounding yes from everybody we talked to. So here is a question for you, and this, DeAndre, goes to you first. Is the crisis mainly one of shortage or affordability?
That is a great question, and that question has been floating around. And I believe that it's a combination. I do. I think that it is, from what my conversation has been with citizens, when we first started collaborating and discussing the housing crisis, the housing shortage, that came up. And so I do believe that we have both. And I believe that it's going to take absolutely everything that we have to address it, and to address it in a manner that's going to impact Fayetteville positively for generations to come.
Okay. Jody?
Yes.
Housing shortage, housing crisis, shortage,
Yes,
affordability.
yeah. By we, the entire nation has a housing crisis right now. And, obviously compounded by the pandemic and all the various supply chain issues that have come out of that. Costs of construction have gone through the roof. It's becoming more and more difficult to build housing across the board. Regarding whether it's shortage or affordability, I agree it's both. And we can't build enough housing right now, especially in a growing city with tens of thousands of people moving here. I think we have to build housing of all types and scales, and obviously, eventually that will solve some issues. We'll start to level out the housing stock, and in doing so, and we've seen it in other cities, Austin for sake, not that we're Austin and we don't want to be, but they started seeing rent rates fall for the first time in decades, and that's because they built enough housing. So I think we need to do that, and eventually that will help out with affordability, but that doesn't help people now. So obviously there needs to be, Arkansas law is tricky in terms of whether or not we can require affordable housing, but I think during this period of growth, we have to find a way to kind of ride the coattails of these large developments to include some incentives for affordability that can help people now, so we can tackle it from both ends, both in the future and now.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. On August 22nd, there was a good article in the Arkansas Democrat Gazette, Northwest Edition, about the Housing Crisis Task Force. That 10-member panel was formed after the City Council in April approved a resolution declaring a housing crisis. So it is official. You were probably at that meeting, Mr. Jones, and
I think so.
Are very well aware. The task force was tasked with spending a year to come up with recommendations to give the City Council on ways to alleviate the city's tight housing market. So a follow-up question for me, and this is a yes, no. Are you optimistic that they will succeed?
Am I?
Yes.
Absolutely. I am optimistic that they will succeed. We are having conversations as we go, but absolutely,
Okay,
I'm
thank you.
optimistic.
Jody?
You have to be. How could you not be optimistic about Northwest Arkansas and all the great people we have here? And if there's a task force comprised of Fayetteville citizens with a good cross-section of renting to owning to leadership to small business, I don't see how we can't succeed.
Thank you, gentlemen. They've been meeting now for some while. First meeting was in June. And in the first meeting, or after those meetings, the committee came out with a report. And I thought it was quite interesting. They have several proposed measures. This could help both of you and us as we move forward this discussion about the housing crisis. Ways to address it. Here are some suggestions that the panel has. Encourage landlords to provide alternative deposit options to tenants. Okay? Landlords could share the deposits they pay for utilities with their tenants. It says here the city could provide the paperwork to make that happen, so we have to believe that. Developers could have the option to hire their own inspectors to submit reports to the city instead of waiting on city inspectors. The city could allow developers to get estimates on requirements such as sidewalks and street improvements, and pay the amount to the city for future installation. Okay, here's another one. Impact fees should be more reflective of the size and scale of residential projects and subsequent use of city resources. Number 6, building permitting should be streamlined and expedited. Anybody in the room in favor of that? It must be developers, right? Okay. Building permitting should be streamlined and expedited. We hear that quite a bit in our conversations with the candidates. It's going to come up in the next 3 forums here. Here's one, a proposal to reduce residential parking minimums, much like the city already does for commercial projects. Parking minimums. We had one citizen email me that very question. He said, what are we going to do about all these cars and not having a place for the actual residents to park themselves? There's about 3 more here. Developers should be able to build homes facing alleys and trails as opposed to streets only, the group heard. That was a new one for me. I don't think I'd ever heard that suggestion. Here's one. The city could host regular events connecting residents who need homes with those who provide, build, finance, and find homes. And then finally, here's one. They could adopt a resolution. City Council could adopt a resolution encouraging developers to build housing of all types, saying their efforts are critical to the city's quality of life. So we're going to delve into perhaps all or at least some of these as we go along, and I think some of your answers are probably going to line up with these that we've been asking. So the task force was formed and was appointed to look for solutions, but the task force does not have any renters on it. Now, we chatted about this in our interviews when you came by the chamber. We've had time to think about it. Should the task force add 1 or 2 renters? And that goes to you first, Jody.
Yes, I mean, I can see the argument against it. Well, okay, well, you know, why would we have a renter whenever, you know, the people who make the decisions are the developers and landlords, and it might be the very reason why you do want a renter involved, to just provide that perspective that I'm not sure that you could have any other way if you're, you know, you're a landlord or a developer.
Okay, DeAndre?
I believe that we do now have a renter.
Okay.
Justin McGowan, and absolutely, because representation matters. In the reality, 60% of our community members are renters. So if we're going to, I believe this, those individuals who are the closest to the problem should be the closest to the solution. When we first started the conversation, when we began the conversation about the housing crisis, everyone that attended, a vast majority of those individuals, they were renters. And they were concerned. And they were concerned about all of the things that we've mentioned. And they were concerned having to move out of Fayetteville because everybody loves this city. We say that all the time. But we would love this city even more if it was affordable. And so because of that, we believe that it is necessary for an individual who is a renter to be a part, to have a seat at the table. And so it is good to know that our housing task force, that they've done that because they value the idea that representation matters.
That sounds like success. Okay, DeAndre, this question goes to you first. Our older neighborhoods are rapidly changing because of infill development. I got this from a citizen email. People feel less safe because of the increased traffic, and finding a place to park at home is increasingly difficult. How can the city help longtime residents in our older neighborhoods cope with infill-caused parking shortage and traffic safety concerns?
That is that if we could have $1 million question, that would be one.
Okay.
We have this conversation right now, and I do believe that we're going to, again, look, we're growing, right? And because of growth, we have to be smart. We have to consider that, how do we do this? How do we making sure that it's accessible and safe? And so I believe that working with the Fayetteville, the mayor's development office, and working with the planning commission, I think that, and the task force, that we're able to identify and create a strategy that will alleviate that. Now, that's going to require a lot of hands on deck. But I do believe that we can do that. I say this all the time. We can do hard things. And that is a hard thing, but it's reality. And so what we have to do, we have to be intentional and we have to be deliberate. Because I can't sit here and tell you that XYZ is going to happen, but it happens with collaboration. And it happens when individuals, when our citizens have trust, and when they are able to build a relationship with their council members. So I think, in short, working together, identifying what's the best solution, and like you mentioned, even looking at what have other cities done. But I do believe that it is urgent. We have to do something right now.
Thank you. Jody?
Sure, yeah. Obviously, yeah, that's tough. Parking all around is going to continue to be tough as more and more people move here. And oh man, and multifamily are kind of parking reductions. That's also very tough. I know that places a burden on neighborhoods too, but to speak specifically to the question about infill in older neighborhoods, man, I think one of the things we can do, as unfortunate as it is maybe enforce some parking standards. You know, only 4 unrelated people or fewer can live in the same house. So I'm sure everyone here in Fayetteville has seen the extra few students living at various houses in our neighborhoods. I know my wife and I did when we lived just south of Lewis Soccer Field. Man, Cedar Street just exploded. One day, the entire length of Cedar Street was bumper to bumper, both sides. And I'm actually kind of impressed that they're able to parallel park that many. But it's happening more and more. And I hate to be the person who, picks up the phone and calls someone to come and enforce that. But, of course, I'm taking the question very literally, but obviously to solve this at large, we're going to have to start to, include more people in the conversations. It's going to have to be, we're going to have to look at it a case-by-case basis, but then start to see the common threads in that so that we can start to have some solutions that address that.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Here's a related question, and it goes to you first, Jody. What can be done to protect neighborhoods from being overbuilt with student housing by developers who are not affiliated with the University of Arkansas?
Oh, yeah. So, overbuilt is an interesting term. So, with any project, there's building code and then there's zoning code. And those two things together tell you how big a housing project is going to be. And the closer you are to campus and the better your infill score is, the more pressure there's going to be for that to be a large project. Yes, that's going to be in some older neighborhoods. But in the end, I think once we start approaching it from that perspective and start building density where it matters and where it counts, it will have the best impact, and we will start to have less traffic, to kind of go back to an issue earlier. We will start to have fewer students living together in groups of 5+ in single-family neighborhoods. I think smart growth, where it makes sense, yes, there's the infill score, but I think we need to start looking at where infrastructure makes sense to build them. So I know I'm not directly answering the question. I just think and maybe I can talk about it more with a few more questions about housing, but I think getting ahead of the conversation is really important so we can start being proactive and not reactive. So the more we can engage with developers ahead of time and provide them the kind of security they need to show all their cards, I think the better. I think collaborating with them and coordinating with them to show them what we want in Fayetteville as soon as possible is absolutely paramount.
Okay. Thank you. All right, gentlemen, we're going to stick with, in general, the housing topic here. A report from the city recently, it was in the paper, about the plan to do some rezoning and improvements down the corridor, down the 71B corridor. And that plan went to the council, and the commission, actually, I'm sorry, it was the planning commission voted to approve it. It'll go to the council probably at some point in time, and one of you will be the Ward 1 representative. The plan in the paper said that it would put more than 600 acres, which is almost a square mile, along the highway through the middle of town into a new zoning district. The city wants to beautify the corridor by adding trees and other improvements and add sidewalks along both sides, put in covered bus stops, improve intersections, and add medians. The corridor plan would allow housing in the area. The corridor has long been a business strip for decades, zoned almost exclusively for non-residential use. So one goal of the plan is to ease the city's tight housing market, planners say. Much of the city's existing water and sewer service runs along that corridor. Allowing housing along the corridor, including multifamily development, would allow more housing without extending city utilities to new areas. Clearly, this is addressing 2 or 3 issues that we've talked about and will be talking about: infrastructure, housing, and the types of housing and where the housing goes. So if this proposal that was approved by the Planning Commission goes to the council as it is, would you vote for this plan? And that goes to DeAndre first.
Absolutely, because we are experiencing a housing crisis. And I believe that this, in order for us to do this, number one, there's no perfect solution, right? And I don't think people are asking for a perfect solution. I think people are asking for what's safe and what's accessible. And I believe that this is an opportunity for us to do that. So I'm definitely going to support that because we are experiencing a housing crisis. We are growing, and it's needed. And I think that we have this conversation of being anti-housing, and I feel like as council members, giving individuals and working and collaborating, creating opportunities opposed to barriers. And I think that a lot of it begins with relationship building and listening to our constituents. And I do that on a daily basis because I can't make an informed decision without your input. And not just input from certain people, but everyone, because this is our city. And so it is a tough question, but growth is good, but growth is even better when we all work together and we manage it in a very smart way. Smart, healthy, and safe way.
Thank you. Jody, do you need me to repeat any of that, or do
No.
you got it?
I've got it.
Good. Go for it.
I think the 71B corridor rezoning is fantastic. I'll start with a little con before I get into all the pros that I'm sure a lot of you already know. I think one of the things that kind of made my skin crawl a little bit is that it's almost too easy. You know, whenever a city's growing, a lot of it's not easy, and you're going to ruffle feathers, and that's what happens whenever you build projects in old neighborhoods. And so that's kind of my nature. I appreciate the grit and the rolling your sleeves up. But on the other hand, it's brilliant, right? You know, building new housing on 71B. The infrastructure is already there, so the city doesn't have to build new infrastructure. And good Lord, wouldn't it be great to get rid of the asphalt sea along College Avenue? And you can do that. Once you densify, you can reduce curb cuts. And once you reduce curb cuts, you can reduce the turning and merging lane. I call it a turning lane. My wife calls it a merging lane, although I tell her not to. So, but along with that, imagine a turning lane turned into, yes, something more beautiful with trees and a boulevard. And I'll use that as a moment to kind of talk about getting from point A to point B. There was a little rendering that kind of went around that got some negative comments on social media of a little median in the middle of College Avenue. Yes, at first it looks like a road hazard, but it takes vision to see all the things it connects to. And that's one of the things I learned whenever I was working at campus planning is there's a long-term vision, and I think it's on the city to start to communicate that as best as possible. We're already doing a pretty good job, but we can always do better to find a way to communicate the end goal of it. So I think a more beautiful College Avenue is absolutely the right direction. Yes, we need to do that. We also do need housing throughout the rest of Fayetteville. Students need to live near campus.
Okay, thank you both. Question to you, Jody, first. Should the city council limit the height of new buildings to 7 stories, 10 stories, 14 stories, higher? Do we want to go any higher?
Well, yeah, I can hop right into it. Yeah, so I think downtown General caps it at 10 or 14 stories, and then Main Street Center and downtown General are around 5 to 7 stories with some asterisks there, depending on it. I mean, it's absolutely something a city should do to craft its future, to determine how high you want the buildings to be, because it has a direct impact on the kind of microclimates you have within the corridors and the shadows and the heat buildup. And I don't know if 7 is the perfect answer. I'm not sure. I would completely defer to staff and all the progress they've made on that so far. But I'll tell you, it needs to fold into building code. You can only build so high, and again, I think I mentioned it earlier, but you give a certain site, you got your zoning code and your building code, and that's how it can be. So you could try and have something be 10 stories, but according to building code, it's going to have to be made out of concrete and steel that's fireproofed up and down to be so you can build that high. So the costs go up exponentially. So all that to say, you need to have a well-balanced approach to what that is. I will say ground floors need to be a little bit taller.
Okay, DeAndre?
Absolutely, a well-balanced approach indeed. I believe that, and you'll hear me say this time and time again, safety. And I believe that we have to work with our city staff in order to determine the number. And I think that we've done a great job, but I think as we grow, we're going to, in my mind, becoming more innovative and thinking outside of the box, right? Looking what some other cities are doing, and again, making it conducive to the character of downtown. And I know that we can do that. However, for me, it's a little difficult figuring out what number. So as always, we will defer to the experts and collaborate with them to reach to determine what's best. But for me, always, safety is the goal.
Okay, thank you, Bo. Next question, DeAndre, this goes to you. The city has limited water use for irrigation in eastern parts of our city. Do we have an infrastructure problem?
Oh, absolutely. And I've had conversations with numerous individuals about that. And so I will say this, I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge our city water and sewer department. They do an amazing job. But because we are growing, those are challenges. And so I believe that as we continue to grow, right, we're going to, and for me, hiring more staff and looking what other cities have done. And one thing that I will say, working with other communities. I think that right now, since we are growing and we are so close to other communities, that it's in our best interest to work and to collaborate with other communities.
Okay, thank you. Staying with water, Jody, to you, should the city of Fayetteville be selling water to other cities?
Oh man, yeah, that ties to the last one, doesn't it? If we're running out, how can we be selling it to other people? You know, I got to say, I would have to defer to our water department to see what that looks like. I mean, I've always heard growing up in Fayetteville that we have enormous reserves of water, and that helped me sleep a little bit better at night. But I think I recall I modeled up a 3D model of exactly how much water we use in a week. And or maybe it was just a day, and it filled up Reynolds Razorback Stadium. It is absolutely astronomical. So I think we can tackle it from both ends. And to answer the last question, yeah, I think every city of our age has an infrastructure problem, and there's leaks, and there's things our city is doing. And I think I remember hearing on NPR on one of my drives to work the other day about some things our city is doing right now with technology to help detect leaks and patch them, so that the water we do have can be held onto and used properly. But we should all be more responsible with our water use. I mean, and you know, it might come from a place of not knowing, or it might come from a place of obstinance. But I think you know, educating the public from the city out to best cases on water use makes a lot of sense. Doesn't quite answer directly your question about selling to other cities. That's something I would defer to our water department and the economics of it.
Okay, DeAndre?
Well, same here. It's a very, when you talk about selling water, when you tell that to the public, the optics of that, but we do have to be, as a city, there is a responsibility, right? We have to be responsible. So, of course, with the infrastructure part of that, again, deferring that to city water and sewer, and to look and see exactly how can we do that without charging, but then also of course, considering the economic impact.
Okay. Here's a question that might be considered just a little bit fun. Is the stormwater management water quality funding fee a tax on rain? That's been said by some pundits I read in the paper. Yeah, that goes to DeAndre first. Tax on rain.
You're right, I've heard that before, and I had a conversation with the citizen about that I believe it was about 2 weeks ago, but initially that's what they thought, but they've had a change of heart, and their thoughts now, they're thinking more of, you know, we appreciate that the city is doing what they can, and they recognize too that there is an economic part of this, and that the city has to. It's not free, and so they are saying now that we understand why the city is looking at it from an economic perspective, because so many people think that water should be free, but when you are impacted with stormwater issues, that tends to change, and especially when you look at communities that when in cities that when they don't have the resources that Fayetteville, that we are so blessed with, what happens, because they don't necessarily have that fee and those resources, their stormwater issues aren't dealt with the way that ours are. So what is happening now is I believe that they are beginning to appreciate what we're doing more, even the cost of it.
Excuse me, follow-up question. You said "they" several times.
Yeah, they. So, I'm sorry,
who's
meaning those individuals that I speak with.
Okay, the constituents that you talk with
Yes,
about.
absolutely, yes.
Okay. Thank you, I appreciate that.
Because that is a very common issue.
Cody?
Sure, yeah. I think it's interesting, the silly slogan, a tax on rain, because that's about the only argument you can come up against it. Rarely do you see some policies apply a fee or a tax to something that so directly impacts the negative consequences of it. As you add more impervious surface, you're going to have more runoff, you're going to have more pollutants entering into areas in a concentrated manner that can't be diffused. So, if you can't absorb it on site and it's shedding off, I think that makes all the sense that those types of developments are paying, and it's not an exorbitant amount, for helping mitigate storm drainage issues across Fayetteville. And I think we've all experienced more rain over, people who've lived here for a while. That's part of climate change. Our region is slated to have more and more rainfall. Not only that, but in more concentrated doses in April and October, and shifting even into November in weird months. So that's not too friendly to our topography here. We've got a lot of hills, and we have, I'd love to poll everyone on how many people have foundation problems in their homes here in Fayetteville. So I think if we can find a way to use impervious surface developments, or developments that add a certain percentage of it, and have a fee associated with that to help offset storm drainage issues, it makes so much sense to me.
Okay, thank you both. Let's just pivot just a little bit here now and talk about regionalism. So we'd like to know how you feel about cooperative planning for the Northwest Arkansas region, our place in that, where that place is, and how involved we should be. And that's your question, Gordon.
Yeah, I think I was mentioning this earlier on one of the cameras before coming up here. So that's one of the things I've seen over the last 20 years whenever I first moved here, is this blurring of the idea of a boundary between Fayetteville and our neighbors, so much so that it is just one continuous stream of development. So just physically, we are connected to our neighbors to the north, Lowell and Johnson and Springdale, to the west to Farmington, and to the east to Elkins, and sooner or later south to Greenland and West Fork. So I think it's absolutely critical that we coordinate with them. And even going even further north, something I heard the other day was how much someone loves Bentonville because of just how cool it makes Fayetteville look. So I think if you support our neighbors, I think Fayetteville can only benefit. We're always going to be the cool kid on the block.
There was a quote. Okay, DeAndre, regional cooperation.
I advocate for regional cooperation. We're growing, and as Jody mentioned, we are connected. And I believe that Fayetteville will thrive even more when we cooperate and when we work with other cities. Springdale and Fayetteville are, they're you can be in Fayetteville and step over the line and you're in Springdale. And so I believe that right now, with the growth of the entire region, that collaborating and working together I believe that it's only going to bolster Fayetteville. There was a conversation as it relates to the unhoused, and a lot of people are looking at it as being a Fayetteville problem. Well, I believe that if we all work together, we can solve this, we can address this collectively, because it's not a Fayetteville issue. When you go up to Rogers and Bentonville, you see some of the same images that you see in Fayetteville. But if we were to work together, I believe that we would be able to address it more effectively.
Thank you, gentlemen. Let's pivot again now to another one of those topics identified by several citizens as their top priority. The U.S. Supreme Court ruled earlier this year, 2024, that homeless persons have rights, but that cities are permitted, and that's the key word here, permitted to enforce bans on homeless people sleeping outside in public places. Some, not me, but some would say they kick the can down the road. Here's our question. Should the city police, Fayetteville City Police, continue to clear out homeless camps, and should the no camping in the city ordinance passed by the city council be more aggressively enforced? DeAndre, it goes to you first.
This is a very sensitive subject to many people, and I'm going to answer it as directly as I can, but I believe that it is up to the city council. It is our responsibility to create shelter and to create a place for individuals who are unhoused. But I do believe that at some point there has to be, and we talk about this a lot, right? Striking a balance. We have to strike a balance. And so we have to be very careful in criminalizing those individuals who are unhoused. My preference would be, of course, looking at how can we get the mental health support. That's my thing. And I know that a lot of people are, it's something that it's easier right then and there to get someone and take them off to jail. But is it really going to be, is it in their best interest, and is it in our best interest as citizens? So my approach, of course, is I know that we have to do something in the meantime, but I just, criminalizing individuals who are unhoused, that's not the solution. However, though, we do have to manage what's happening with the unhoused. And I've had several conversations since I've been elected with individuals who, they'll call me and tell me that someone is sleeping on their property, and I know that that's challenging. So I do believe that we, again, striking a balance and figuring out what can we do, but at the same time remembering that treating everyone with dignity and respect. And I think that is part of that's part of our job. And it's difficult, but again, it all comes back to striking a balance, developing partnerships, and making sure that we're treating everyone with dignity and respect.
Jody?
Sure, yeah. So, yes, the Supreme Court said you can ban encampments and ban camping outside. No, I don't think we should do that. I don't think punitive measures against those camping outside helps anything. Let's say you book them, you take them to jail. That doesn't save us money. That doesn't help them. It's not humane. I don't think it makes sense in any form or fashion. And I'll say if I got to pick any police department in the state to help interface with our unsheltered in Fayetteville, I would pick the Fayetteville Police Department every time. And so I think they have the talent and the skills and the focusing on service as well as protect to be able to handle these situations on a case-by-case basis. And then, zooming out, obviously I'm not a lawyer. That's one of the reasons I'm running. I think there needs to be more architects in government. But, I think hopefully this will provide some better legal footing for the university and city to talk to each other about forming better decisions and regulations on how to handle, the unsheltered in our, and, reading through all of the different policies of like whether it's, housing first or service first or community first, each and every one across the entire world is always about getting community leaders, faith groups, and even business owners, small business owners on the same page and in the same room to agree to a charter, if you want to call it that. But it takes collaboration with everybody because it affects all of us. It affects us to the north as well, and we can do better.
Thank you, gentlemen. Jody, question goes to you. Sunday alcohol sales will be on the November ballot. Do you understand in favor of that?
Yes. No. Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So which is it, yes or no?
Yes, it's yes, yes. It feels like a no-brainer to me. Back in the day, it was trips up to Missouri. Missouri was getting our sales tax dollars, and now we've got Springdale, so it's slowly inching further and further south. And so all I can see it doing is adding to our sales tax revenue in Fayetteville. It's a sales tax state, and we have our supplemental beverage tax of 5%. I think it just makes sense for Fayetteville to not lose that to other cities in our area, and it will hopefully cut down on traffic on Sundays.
So you found a way to attack the traffic problem.
Thank you.
It's
Go back to a previous question
solving
on that.
itself.
Yeah. Okay. DeAndre, alcohol.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I am glad that that's on the ballot, and I'm hoping that it will pass, and I'm just wondering why we haven't done it a long time ago. But absolutely, absolutely.
Okay. This sounds like we're reverting, but I couldn't find anywhere else to put this question. Okay. Should the city regulate so-called panhandling? Now, I don't have a better term, or I would use it, but that's the term that was given to us by a citizen. So, DeAndre, you're first. Should the city regulate so-called panhandling?
Regulating panhandling. I think that with my background with social work, when you think about regulating, again, that's a barrier. I come from a place of empowerment, and I believe that my answer would be the city should create more resources or strengthen the resources that we have to empower those individuals. And I believe that we can do that. And I know what your question is, saying, should we regulate? But I'm very thankful that we have the police department that we have, as Jody referenced, and the fact that they have developed a social response team, and I appreciate that. But at the end of the day, I feel as if that our goal as council members, part of our goal is, and our job, of course, is to alleviate a lot of those those barriers. And some people may not agree. Some people may say that that's not government's responsibility. But I do believe that our community is made stronger when we lift from the bottom and gives everyone the opportunity to rise. And so as far as regulations, it all depends. But I do believe that it's going to have to be on a case-by-case basis. If we were to do that, it would have to, I would seriously have the conversation and considering bringing counselors and social workers involved to work on or to develop a strategy and approach that is going to be effective opposed to adversarial.
Thank you. Jody?
I guess my short answer is yes, in a kind of way. Obviously, there was the kind of legal back and forth from 2016 to 2020 and a little bit beyond, allowing it to be legal to just ask for help in public. And I think that does make a lot of sense. But I think the kind of visceral reaction people have to it are, at a busy intersection and someone's really close to your car. And not to speak for everybody, but I think if there is a form of regulation, I think it needs to be driven by this providing safety for the people asking for help in public, as well as people who want to give them money and maybe don't want to open their car door and reach out a little bit. So I don't know what that looks like. I think it starts with talking to them and community leaders that know them by name. But above and beyond that, I think there could be a better information outreach, I guess, whether that's physical signage in these locations or some online information resources so that people who do want to donate can find ways to donate to organizations that help them. And there's cities who have done this. I think Wilmington, North Carolina had a kind of signage and wayfinding thing with information about how to develop, although it was weird. They had one organization that you had to donate to. That was a little weird. But, I think empowering people to, yes, help them and get the most out of their dollar, but also keeping people safe, I think has to be any approach.
Okay. Thank you both. Moving down the line, it seems widely agreed, at least among developers, that our city is not easy to do business with. Should the council directly address this reputation, whether it's deserved or not, with staff and planning commissioners? And Jody, you go first.
Yeah, I've heard that. I can't agree with it full-heartedly, having worked with staff and council. I don't think they're anti-development, but obviously we can always improve. And so I'm not sure we should be fighting against the reputation. We should just be doing the smart things. We should be streamlining the entitlement process. It's kind of a no-brainer. And I think that comes through various incentives for building housing or buildings of any kind in the right place. And that requires getting ahead of that through zoning and having a staff that's properly equipped to not only handle what's on their plate right now, but to handle things that are coming down the pipeline for the next couple of decades. And you can only do that if you're properly staffed. And I wholly believe that our planning department needs to be staffed up to handle not only now but the future. Lost my train of thought. Yeah, essentially just we need to support our planning staff so we can help plan for the future and I think that's going to be through zoning. I think that's the only thing that's going to give teeth to our aspirational 2020, 2030, 2040, 2050, so on and so forth master plans that are beautiful. And thank goodness we have alignment from citizens to city leadership that we do want a walkable city. We just have to get there, and I think it starts with planning.
May I ask a clarifying question?
Yes.
You said streamline entitlement process.
Permitting.
I thought perhaps you meant permitting there. Thank you. We'll put permitting in there. Okay, DeAndre?
Yes, I've heard that before numerous times, and I feel that because of the growth, because we're growing, and I believe that it's creating better partnerships and creating opportunities opposed to barriers. I think that we mentioned earlier about the region and having businesses and having individuals move to the other part of Northwest Arkansas because of their reputation. To me, I want everybody to live in Fayetteville because Fayetteville, as we all know it, is the best of the best. However, I do believe that and I'll say this time and time again, being smart, but also too, we have to develop a relationship with the developers, and I've done that through each time that a developer, when they reach out to me about something in Ward 1, we have a serious conversation. I believe that we have a very dedicated conversation because I'm wanting to see how can we fix this in a way that's going to be beneficial to our community members. And so I believe that we have to look at it from making sure that we are looking out for Fayetteville in the future and Fayetteville now. And so eliminating barriers, I think that is something that we have to do, and let's start creating more opportunities.
Okay, thank you both. Let's talk short-term rentals. We have current regulations on short-term rentals. Do you think that they are appropriate, what we have now? Are they fair to owners, and are they fair to neighbors? And DeAndre, you get first crack.
I think so. I think that we are in the process. And again, I say this, there's no perfect process, but I do believe that it has improved a lot. And it does impact our housing stock. So I do believe, and I'm glad that we are able now to develop regulations that are fair and sensible.
Okay, Jody?
Yeah, Airbnbs and VRBOs. I mean, that's what we're talking about. Yeah, right. Short-term rentals. So, right. Yes, I think it makes sense to regulate them. Obviously there was some back and forth there. There was a study, and I think finally it came to a culmination in 22 or so. I think it's better than them flying under the radar, and they weren't paying a hospitality tax. At least I'm not sure that they were. So I think yes, they need to be regulated. I'm not privy to the cap we have right now. I would like to look at that more. But I can understand why they had a target on their back. It's looking at beautiful homes that are sometimes empty and sometimes overflowing with out-of-town visitors. But I will say, and this is kind of stepping back from the regulation, but there's something that I've loved about the various Airbnbs and VRBOs and anywhere I've traveled to, or whenever I'm downtown Fayetteville. I think I would prefer seeing people visit Fayetteville, even if it's like for a week or just a weekend, an Airbnb downtown, and start spending their dollars downtown, and we get that sales tax from them. And yes, maybe they're a little bit rambunctious if they're kids, versus houses that are only used during the game season, and they come down in their jet and they land for a little bit and they roll up their blinds, but throughout the year it's you can hardly tell how many of these are inhabited. So I'm always going to gravitate towards liking activity, as chaotic as it might be downtown, but that's a little bit of a tangent from the real point of the question. But yeah, I think they need to be regulated, and I can kind of understand the target on their back. They're not necessarily helping the housing crisis so much, and I'm not sure to what degree that impact is.
Okay, thank you. Let's think back to earlier questions where we discussed the homeless situation or the unhoused people, and the panhandling scenario in which we are trying to get a handle on that. Can the city do anything related to or about the closed crisis intervention center, which some people are relating to perhaps the problems, the other two problems, the housing and the panhandling? It's closed. My understanding, the crisis intervention center was operating, and now due to lack of funds or whatever, it's closed. Can the city do anything about that? Jody, you're first.
Man, I was hoping DeAndre would be first on that one. Can the city do this? Yeah, I would turn and ask the city lawyer. The crisis center, I'm not sure what their funding stream is or what their entanglements are with the municipality or anything like that. I can cross my fingers and hope so. That sounds like something we need, and it's a shame that it's not available. We need more of it, and if it's closed, that's moving in the wrong direction. So in terms of can the city do anything, I'm not sure how to answer that without deferring to the city.
Sounds like that you'd be ready to vote for a solution if one were found with suitable funding.
Yes.
Okay, DeAndre, would you agree with that?
Absolutely. And again, I work in mental health, and I'm aware of how the closing of the crisis center, how it has continued to impact our community. The lack of infrastructure for mental health services in Northwest Arkansas is real, and Fayetteville is no different. So I would love to see the city do what we can. And of course, there's always the legal aspect, and of course, consulting with KIT like we do on all things. But I do believe that that's an investment in people, and that is part of health and safety. And I believe that that it would be so nice if we could do something. And I'm definitely open to exploring those options. We work very well with our police department, the social response team, the social workers, even bringing the University of Arkansas along, and the hospitals, and just putting together some type of committee to explore exactly how can we solve this collectively, how can we address this together, because it impacts all of us, and especially now with school is starting back, and there's just not a lot of places for people to be able to go. So I would love to see Fayetteville, our city council, address that and possibly fund it, do what we can to make sure that that is a resource, a strong resource in our community for health and wellness.
Okay, thank you both. We're going to squeeze in one more question before we get to your closing remarks. The City Council delayed discussion on August 20th of a Fayetteville School District request to cut down century-old trees next to the high school to make way for a parking deck. The request was on the council's agenda, but the council voted 7-0, which I guess means includes you, DeAndre. to leave the matter to the September 17th meeting, which is coming up, to allow discussion between the district and the city. Councilmember Robert Stafford left the meeting before the vote. Mr. Stafford, I believe you're here, aren't you? Okay. This is called getting held accountable in public for your votes and for everything else. That's right.
The school board requested that delay.
Okay. Well, building the proposed parking garage would require an exemption to the city's tree preservation easement. Would you vote for this easement if it comes to the council? And that goes to DeAndre first.
Well, you're absolutely right. We've received a lot of emails. We've been contacted by parents and teachers, and rightfully so. And I'm waiting on. We're actually waiting to hear from the school board, looking at what other options are there. And I've heard that it's really costing the parents. There are financial challenges, of course, safety, and our school is our community is growing, our school is growing. And so if there is a possible way for us to do both, I don't want it to become an and/or issue. And so I'm looking at exactly what can we do to meet in the middle. But we have a real problem with our school, and I just believe that it's very important for our community, for our city and school to work together closely. It's good to know that we have a great relationship with our schools. And I don't want people to think that this is an either or, but how can we work together? How can we achieve this safety and do what we can to accommodate the teachers, the parents, and the students, and also preserve our trees? And so I'm looking forward to that conversation, and hopefully we will be able to find a suitable plan B.
Okay, Jody?
So it's a sticky situation. From my background, my first question as a council member would be, show me your other options for this garage, as opposed to just putting it right here where this easement is, the seemingly easiest thing to do. It sounds a little tone deaf, and I think it's unfortunate that the city's put in a position to say yes to something because it started so late. I think the earlier you were in talks with planning staff and the city, the better. This would have been found out sooner before real dollars have been spent on designing the thing, and that's becoming more and more expensive. So it is frustrating, but I can see what position the city is in. Obviously, there needs to be a garage, and I wasn't the surveyor, so I don't know if the parking lot to the north is viable or not, but I would hope that would have been one of the options. That's one of the first things you do as a design team is you start to suss out the various options. So it's tough because right now money has been spent. So yeah, maybe there's not so much a middle ground, but a compromise to be made where, there's some giant, beautiful trees there, and going against that easement undermines any future preservation easements the city's going to allow or a developer is going to try and ask for. So maybe there are some giant trees that can be transported elsewhere, maybe planted. How do you offset that? All that to say, it's very tough. The question is, would I vote for it? It's unfortunate that it's gotten to this point, but I'm not sure what choices are left.
So this is what you have to look forward to as members of the city council, whichever of you wins. Mr. Stafford, I owe you an apology. I did not mean for that statement to be negative toward you. We appreciate your service on the city council. Are we okay? Yeah, all right. All right, we're ready now for our closing statements. And as we said earlier, each of you will get 2 minutes. And we'll start first with Jody, and then we'll have DeAndre. Jody, go ahead.
Okay, so I'll continue with my life story. I think I last left off graduating during a recession. I got to hide out at campus planning at the University of Arkansas. I got to kind of have those amazing benefits as practically a child. But then I got to see, it was a moment of extreme growth at the university. During the recession, there was that cheap bond money, so they were building like crazy at a time that architects were losing jobs left and right. So I was lucky to be a part of seeing that growth, but I also got to see some of the results of the recession. So I got to be not a voting member, but I got to sit in on the selection committee. I got to see how the sausage is made there. It's prettier than you might think, but the university is a huge, multi-headed dragon to deal with, not really knowing who to ask what questions. So I learned a lot there. I built a 3D model of almost the entire campus during that period of growth so we could maintain view sheds and maintain master plan alignments, really holding on to the character of the university and helping build new character at the University of Arkansas. And then in 2013, it was a big year for me. Met my now wife, moved in with her, and got a new job in the private sector. I knew I needed to be licensed. I knew I needed to push myself professionally. And I said goodbye to those sweet, sweet university benefits and started working towards learning how to actually get things built. So that kind of brings me to my closing point of that is my experience. If anyone of y'all know someone who went through the Fay Jones School of Architecture, you know about the all-nighters, you know the grit, you know the determination, you know, standing in front of a jury of absolute professionals while you're a 20-something-year-old and like having to hold your back up straight, be confident, and sell your design to them. And those skill sets through my education and professionally to get something done just requires collaboration with people of all sorts, contractors, clients of all kinds, and that's the kind of grit and determination and persistence that I would love to bring to Fayetteville, Arkansas.
Thank you. DeAndre?
Thank you, Jody. I didn't share my life story just today because a lot of you are familiar with it, but I will talk about the last 4 years. The last 4 years has been a learning experience for me. I had the opportunity to represent Fayetteville, the National League of Cities, Racial Equity and Leadership Council, where I was voted as vice chair. In addition, I was appointed to serve on the Workforce and Economic Committee, and this is comprised of council members and mayors from all over the country. And I learned a lot. But not only that, when I walked into the room and they saw my name and they saw Fayetteville, Arkansas, they were amazed. We're known throughout the entire country. And the things that we're doing here, we are considered the diversity gem of the South. And not just because of the Razorbacks, but we've been voted one of the top 10 places to live in the country for several years now. And we're looked upon as Arkansas's best kept secret. And I think that with all that being said, those are the good parts of Fayetteville. But I believe that we have an opportunity. What I've done as a city council member, I've listened to everyone. Every email, within 48 to 72 hours, I do my very best to respond. I'm a former case manager, so I've gone to houses, and I've visited, and I've sat with people, and I've talked with them, and I've talked them through issues. But the most important thing that I've done is I've listened. And if I could please everyone, I would, but that's not the world that we live in. I promised in 2020 that I was going to put the needs of the citizens above politics, and I've been able to do that. And while serving on city council, some things have happened in Fayetteville that hadn't happened before, but I can't take the credit for that. It is a collaboration, working with nonprofits, working with Bob on the council, the opportunity to learn and continue to collaborate, but most importantly, talking to the constituents. I look forward to that. We've been on vacation. I've responded to emails and phone calls. Lance can tell you, I was getting my doctoral degree, and on my way to Tulsa, I was talking about the city of Fayetteville because I care. So I would appreciate your vote and your vote and your trust on November 5th. Thank you.
Folks, these are your candidates for Ward 1, Position 2. All right, we will start our third forum at about 6:30, and this wraps up forum number 2. Thank you for coming.
It's nice to meet you as well. How are you?